So greeting friends, happy Mother's Day. I'm sure we have some mothers in the room, or we just honor the mother that is our parents and Mother Earth and the feminine. So it's really delightful to do Lunch and Learns. And this is a part two with Morgan Reeser. And Morgan is delightful. She lives in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and she works at the Natural Grocers grocery company, really quite wonderful. So I'll read a little bio and then I'll turn it over to Megan. She received her certification as a nutritional health coach from the Institute for Integrative Nutrition in 2011 and is certified by the American Association of Drugless Practitioners. 10 years into her career in health and wellness has led her to a place of gratitude and humility. That's a very positive spiritual place to live in.
It is.
And as a holistic health coach, she's morphed over the years to incorporate various elements. She works with individuals one-on-one and in groups. She's worked as a raw vegan chef where she's created and sold products and cooked and delivered nutrient-dense meals for busy families. Well, I'm going to have her make a lunch for us tomorrow on Mother's Day. So now Morgan sees herself as an educator, paving the way for others to discover their own healing journey. I think that's very important. We're all in the midst of our healing journey, and learning information is helpful. Natural Grocers is where she expands her role to educate the community. When she's not at Natural Grocers, she's enjoying nature, hot springs, and having wonderful, healthy food and with friends and family. So welcome, Megan. So nice to be with you.
Morgan.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, guys.
Morgan.
Yes, M&M.
Thanks, Dr.
Thank
B.
you.
Yeah, take it away, Morgan.
That was a lovely introduction. Thank you, Dr. B. And thank you, Megan. It is wonderful to be back here today, guys. And I want to thank everybody who's joining us today, whether it's your first class on skin health or if you're returning for part two. And if you missed part one and you are curious about my background and what got me interested in health and wellness, I did talk a little bit about myself and my own struggles with my skin, actually, and how that kind of paved my health and wellness journey. I also talked a little bit about the Natural Grocers difference in part one, so you can also check that out. It's truly a miraculous company to be a part of. And I was a customer for quite some time, but got very curious about this health coaching role that they have. And these days I find myself on the other side of the fence. So if anybody out there is ever interested in a career with Natural Grocers, I'd always be happy to share more information with you too. That being said, guys, I will put our slides up here in just a minute. I want to take a moment to review some of our key takeaways from part one, as well as ask you guys if you had any questions that were kind of hanging out after last time that maybe came to you over the last 4 weeks. And if you do have any questions from part one, we can take a few minutes to answer those and define any definitions and things of that nature. And then I'll also spend a few minutes talking about a product called HelioCare that was asked about last time. I don't know if the person who asked about HelioCare, Fern Block, is on the call this time, but if you are, you're welcome to say hello, and I will talk about that product for a moment because I did some research. And then I'll mention what we're going to cover today, or objectives for today, and we'll jump into the material. I'll pause at some point to ask some clarifying questions, see if anybody needs a few minutes to further understand any concepts, and then we'll continue. And then at the end, we can have some more time for questions and discussion. All right, so that being said, if you didn't get to check out part one, please do so. And just as a quick review from part one, we spent a lot of time last time going over how the sun damages our skin and can cause us to age unnaturally. So we talked about an intrinsic path of aging and an extrinsic path of aging. In particular, how we age unnaturally from the UVA and UVB rays from the sun. Then we went on to talk about some of the inside out protection that we can offer our skin. In particular, we focused on nutrients that preferentially accumulate in the skin and in the eyes and act as our own natural internal sunscreen, so to speak. These are nutrients like A, C, and E, some of our major antioxidant players. Also, some lesser known nutrients that fall into this free radical scavenging category as well, like different carotenoids and polyphenols. Lots of different plant pigment compounds that offer the plant a natural defense against pests and invaders. Thus, when we consume these plants, we get these similar defense mechanisms through the polyphenols, the flavonoids, different carotenoids, all together acting as what we would refer to as free radical scavengers. Sometimes the word antioxidant is a little bit more well known. However, a free radical scavenger and an antioxidant are doing the same thing. We just can properly call certain things antioxidants like A and C and E, selenium, and other guys that act as antioxidants as well, we more properly describe as free radical scavengers. How were they protecting our skin? Well, all of these guys together as free radical scavengers, we talked about how they will donate their electron to a free radical, thus neutralizing that free radical, preventing it from creating further damage, inflammation, and oxidative stress to our skin. We spent a few minutes talking about blue light as well, and the unique free radical created by blue light. Last but not least, we spent a bit of time talking about omegas or fatty acids and their role in skin health, in particular, stabilizing our cell membrane structures and really helping to modulate our sebum concentration. So that being said, guys, I want to open it up to you all. Does anybody have any burning questions from last time? And if not, yes?
Oh, I was just gonna say, I don't see anything in the chat and I don't see any hands raised.
Okay,
so
Megan.
okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Since there are no questions, I'm going to take one more moment then to talk about HelioCare. Somebody asked about HelioCare last time. Christina and I were not familiar with HelioCare. I said, it sounds like a trademark product. So I looked it up. I didn't spend a ton of time on it, but this is my takeaway from HelioCare. So it is a trademarked product. They use something called Polypodium leucotomus fern in the product. This is a plant native to South America. And my main takeaway from this is just like lots of the other plants that we were talking about, full of different free radical scavengers. So flavonoids and polyphenols, antioxidants of all sorts. This particular plant, native to South America, just like all the other plants that we come encounter with, has its own set of polyphenols and flavonoids that are acting in the same way as a lot of the different nutrients that we talked about. It's acting as a free radical scavenger. So if I lived in South America, I might be inclined to check out this particular fern. I think the main point is this. We want to cast a nice wide net in terms of the things that we're eating so that we can diversify the amount of nutrients that we get from all of these different plants and the plant compounds. And one easy way to do that is to focus on getting lots of different colors on your plate and in your diet. My other takeaway from this product was I wanted to see, is it considered a safe product to my understanding of product standards? This particular company does use the GMP practices from what I could see on their website. So the third-party good manufacturing practices, which means they have a third party verify that what they say is in their product is in it, as well as how much of what they say is in it is in it. And it's also tested for things like traces of heavy metals, artificial flavors, colorings, things like that. I took a look at the other ingredients as well, and I didn't see anything alarming in there either. What was the last thing I was going to say about it? Oh, yeah, they do have a page with their own studies. They are their own studies. They're still interesting to look at. I would wait for the day where they have a third party also verifying their studies as well. But interesting product, and I really thank whoever brought it up for bringing it to our attention. I found it on Amazon. I found it on Walgreens, which can sometimes make you go, oh, I wonder about the quality. But I felt pretty good about the quality based on what I read. So if anybody has any questions about HelioCare Fern Block, please let me know. How do you spell it? Yeah, HelioCare, and then Fern, FERNBLOCK. And if there are no questions on that product, that was the most information I gathered without spending, an hour on it. I'll talk a little bit about our learning objectives for today, guys. So welcome back. Today, we're going to talk about how our diet influences our skin health. So, for example, we're going to talk about unbalanced blood sugar and what that means for our skin health, as well as something called AGEs. And it's a little bit ironic that AGEs, which stands for Advanced Glycation End Products, also spells age. And then we're going to talk about how to support our skin health through our diet, i.e., how you can get more of the nutrients we talked about in part 1 from food, supplements, and topicals. And then lastly, I will talk about a few nutrients that can actually effectively block AGE formation. So buckle up, because here we go. Let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, guys, so last time we ended on this slide, and I'm a big fan of this slide because it's a really simple table that reveals a lot. So last time at the very end, we talked about some supplements that have a lot of good research behind them and have been shown to be supportive of skin health, destroying free radicals in the skin generated by UV. I have some of them behind me today as well. And just to review today's objective, well, there are dietary patterns that we can follow that, combined with supplementation, really enhance the way we can support our skin's health. And this table is interesting because it's been found that there's a very low level of skin cancer in places like Greece, despite being very close to the equator and receiving high solar energy and exposure. So this table shows us that per 100,000, per males and per females, 100,000, we can see that the incidence of skin cancer in Greece, despite this high solar radiation, is pretty low. We see it's a lot higher in Australia, definitely higher in the United States. Sweden is up there. Compared to all of these other countries on this table, Greece is coming in pretty positively. So we have some questions to ask ourselves about that. Oh yeah, my arrows. I'm going to use the arrows, not the clicker. So I want you guys to think inside your heads for a few minutes. A traditional Greek diet, where do you think they get approximately 50% of their calories from? Is it healthy fats, carbohydrates, protein, or wine? Well, some of us might wish it to be wine. No, it's those good old healthy fats.
Yes.
And if you said healthy fats yourself, you are absolutely correct. And those following a traditional Greek diet get their fat from things like olive oil, grass-fed lamb, and also from seafood. And these offer an abundance of healthy, stable sources of fat that support the health of all body systems and all cell membranes, which is pretty darn cool. So what's so special about this traditional Greek diet, and who out there is eating like this? Well, for one thing, it's rich in vegetables, no surprise, right? Which contain what? Lots and lots of things like antioxidants, such as vitamin C, carotenoids, and polyphenols. Now, remember, guys, when we talk about things like carotenoids and polyphenols, again, we're referring to different plant compounds that act as the plant's natural defense mechanisms. And when we think about what our plate should look like to really represent optimal health, we want to imagine half of our plate, not that you can see this too well, half of our plate filled with colorful vegetables 3 times a day. Or we can imagine 9 cups of vegetables approximately a day. That's just the kind of roundabout target number that one could aim for to look for this optimal level of health. Now, protein sources in this diet, they're usually grass-fed meats or seafood, which help balance the ratio of omega-3 to omega-6 fatty acids in the diet. I'm sure you guys have heard of this before. It's preferred that we would have a 1-to-1 ratio of these omega-3s to omega-6s, or even a 2-to-1 ratio of omega-3s to 6s. That would be truly ideal and closer to what our ancestors displayed. Many American profiles are closer to 20-to-1 omega-6s to omega-3s, leaving us very imbalanced as far as our omega-3s or inflammation modulating fats compared to omega-6s, which can often be pro-inflammatory fats. What this does, if we have that correct ratio or something closer to the correct ratio, it really helps to support a balanced inflammatory response in the body and in the skin, which helps regulate levels of inflammation. Now, they're also going to have things like moderate intake of antioxidants from rich red wine. So things like resveratrol in red wine do act as potent antioxidants, and resveratrol is also a plant compound. In fact, the fermentation process of the grapes is what increases the resveratrol content.
Okay,
Now,
I'm still listening, but I gotta use the bathroom.
Now, overall, this diet is actually very similar to what's recommended by the natural grocers health coaches and what's on what we would refer to as our healthy meal wheel. Although the Greeks might eat a little bit more fat than we suggest, and we love healthy fats. So the main takeaway from this part is we imagine that plate, right, in our mind's eye. Half of that plate we want to try and fill with really colorful vegetables and some fruits. Then a nice quarter of that plate, this can be some nice healthy protein about the size of our own palm, which is pretty cool. So your palm is almost personalized to you. And then from there, we need a little bit of healthy fats that can come as additional flavor on top. You know, maybe you're going to drizzle some olive oil, or you're going to use some butter, or the healthy fat could already be a component of the protein from the animal source or seafood that you're consuming. From there, we have a really nice, well-rounded plate that's going to support healthy blood sugar levels, which we're going to talk about in just a few minutes. So what role do these obviously important healthy fats play in skin protection? Well, let's see. Oh, I thought I froze there for a minute. So how does fat support our skin? I said during our review that having stable fats in our diet will help support stability in our cell membranes as well. When we look at the compounds that make up our skin, the oils are made up of certain fats and two very strong antimicrobial compounds that help defend and protect our skin from infection are made from saturated fat and monounsaturated fat. The saturated fat being lauric acid. If you've ever heard of lauric acid, it is naturally present in human sebum. We also find it in coconut milk, probably most familiar with that one, breast milk, and small amounts in cow and goat's milk. It's a saturated fat. We also find saponinic acid as well. Now, saponinic acid is a fatty acid. It's a major component of our human sebum, and it's unique to humans, and it's a monounsaturated fat. Now, other research shows us that not eating enough healthy fats like EPA and DHA, those omega-3s that help modulate inflammation, or having an overabundance, too many pro-inflammatory omega-6 fats or trans fats found in processed foods can relate to can result to damage to the skin's barrier and increase the risk of infections. So what are these pro-inflammatory omega-6 fats and trans fats anyway? Mostly, I want you guys to think of and remember when it comes to omega-6 pro-inflammatory fats, we're mostly referring to seed and vegetable oils. And that's because these guys, there's nothing wrong with them inherently in nature, but they are very fragile. And it takes a lot of heat and pressure to take the sunflower to the sunflower oil. And in that process, the delicacy of these compounds become damaged and pro-inflammatory to our bodies. And that's not even to mention when we get them home and heat them up, or if they're in a prepackaged food and sitting on a shelf. So that's one area in which we can help promote a better ratio between omega-3s and omega-6s, is to limit the amount of pro-inflammatory omega-6 seed and vegetable oils that come in through our diet. So seed vegetable oils, corn, canola, sunflower, safflower, soy, those guys. Sometimes you just see vegetable oil, parentheses, combination of. I said trans fatty acids too. Most of us are aware of these, but not all of us are aware of mono and diglycerides, chemically modified fats that raise our triglyceride levels. There are actually over 200 ingredients that Natural Grocers does not allow through the front door, and mono and diglycerides, chemically modified fats, are one of those items. We have a list that customers can actually take and reference. Now you can find mono and diglyceride chemically modified.
So I think, Megan, you might have muted.
Sorry about that. Morgan, give me one moment. Sorry about that.
I've unmuted myself.
Thank you.
What did you guys miss there?
The last 5 seconds.
Mono and diglycerides,
Yes, there we
chemically
go.
modified fats. I don't know if you heard all of that, but basically the take home there is they're not very obvious to us, mono and diglyceride fats. And you really do have to look at that ingredient label and know what the heck these things are to know if it's a pro-inflammatory fat that you're taking in through your diet. Olive oil, we mentioned olive oil, right? It has the amazing benefit of not only providing fatty acids that support skin health and promote natural aging, but also has many polyphenols that support skin health and prevent unnatural skin aging. All right. So these are just some of the dietary changes that can positively influence our skin health. Whoops, my slide didn't go. There we go. Pardon that. But what about things that we should not be doing or eating that can lead to poor skin health? Because that's just as important if you ask me. Now, I know there's a lot going on in this picture, and some of you may already be familiar with blood sugar and how that can affect all systems, not just skin health. But we are going to take a few minutes here and get on a ride that nobody likes to be on called the blood sugar roller coaster. And while we could spend an entire hour talking about blood sugar, I will pause after the next two slides to take any questions or clarifying moments, because we're not going to spend an hour talking about blood sugar today. But this here is a representation of blood sugar. And because blood sugar is a foundation of health, meaning so many systems are affected by it working optimally or not, we can see from this diagram that consistently unbalanced levels of blood sugar can translate to poor health in lots of different areas. We see cardiovascular health, immune function, brain fog, cravings, fat storage, insulin dysfunction, and inflammation up there, to name a few. So many different body systems are affected by blood sugar that is not balanced, either too high or too low, and on the roller coaster. In terms of skin health, we can think of blood sugar regulation in two ways. We can clearly see from this list inflammation on there. And since oxidative stress and inflammation go hand in hand, supporting healthy levels of inflammation in the body also supports skin health in a very big way. Perhaps a little bit less obvious, we want to look at all of these other systems and think optimal health. How do we achieve optimal health? Well, we need enough of the nutrients available to support multiple systems at once optimally, because most nutrients have more than one job to do, right? They're busy. So here's where we think about the term triage, right? So I'm going to use vitamin C as an example. Vitamin C has a lot of different jobs. One of its main jobs is actually to support the adrenal glands. The adrenal glands use a lot of vitamin C, and the adrenal glands are responsible for regulating some of our stress hormones like cortisol. Cortisol is involved in blood sugar regulation if we're not using our food properly to regulate blood sugar. And our adrenal glands will use ascorbic acid, vitamin C, to manage our cortisol levels. Now, vitamin C has a lot of different other jobs to do. It's a cofactor in many biochemical reactions. And if we want enough vitamin C to accumulate preferentially in our skin, like we said it does, to help protect our skin, like we said it can do, we need optimal levels of vitamin C so that vitamin C can do all of those other critical jobs and support our skin health. Similar things happen with like vitamin D as well. Its main job is to regulate calcium, blood calcium levels, but it has a lot of other jobs it can do too. So vitamin D won't be very effective at supporting our immune health if our levels are too low, because it's always going to prioritize regulating blood calcium levels first. So even though this is a little bit less obvious, this is the best part about these nutrients, in my opinion, because it gives us that holistic picture and it shows us how important the whole pie is, as well as each little slice of the pie. So, my clicker worked that time, or my arrows worked that time. One of these biochemical stressors, guys, is the formation of something called AGEs, or advanced glycation end products. And AGEs is just one little effect of something called high blood sugar or unbalanced blood sugar levels. And this absolutely contributes to inflammation and oxidative stress. And on this diagram, we can see that eating a meal containing something like sugar or refined carbohydrates like processed grains, things like fruit juice and sodas, can cause the blood sugar to rise really quite rapidly out of this middle, here's my finger here, middle normal range. And when our blood sugar levels spike like this, there's so much sugar present in the blood that it begins to stick to proteins in the body that it's not supposed to be attached to. Blood sugar swings alone is enough to create these AGEs. And when these AGEs accumulate on protein, the proteins don't work as well. We can try and imagine trying to put a key into a lock that's covered with corn syrup and goo. It just doesn't work right. The information in the key is lost, doesn't fit, and it's just a total mess. But worse than the symptoms is the roller coaster puts a lot of stress on our body, and that's not good for our skin or other tissues. So before we take a look at the dermis here again, like last time, and how it affects those tissues, I want to take a moment to open up the floor for any questions about blood sugar and what it means to have unbalanced blood sugar and how we can better understand blood sugar balance if that's something that's a challenge for you. So if anybody has any questions on blood sugar regulation, understanding the diagram.
Michelle raised her hand. Go ahead, Michelle.
I had heard once that if you ate protein with sugar, that it helped to metabolize slower, or, not like just go straight into your system. Are you aware of this?
I'm so glad you brought this up, Michelle. It's like the one note I didn't put on my notes today. I was like, don't forget to tell them about pairing things. Thank you, Michelle. Yes, a good rule of thumb is if we pair a quality protein and a healthy fat with our carbohydrate, it will slow down the breakdown and absorptions of glucose or sugar into the bloodstream, thus raising our blood sugar more gently and thus sustaining our blood sugar over the course of 1, 2, 3, potentially 4 hours before we return to fasting glucose levels. So in your question, you said sugar, right? So lots of things will break down into glucose or sugar, and our carbohydrate spectrum goes all the way from a really complex carbohydrate like kale, for example, all the way to something really, really, really simple like a bagel. So we've got this long spectrum of carbohydrates, complex and simple. So the further we move from that kale and we move into something a little bit starchier and less fiber, we get into like our root vegetables, carrots and beets. We get into the winter squashes and things and potatoes. And then we've got the rices coming out, our gluten-free grains and wheat. Beans are in there too. And we just keep moving along that spectrum until we get closer and closer to the simple carbohydrates like that bagel that's going to break down into glucose really rapidly. So we have lots of carbohydrates to choose from to support our carbohydrate needs, which really comes down to your own energy needs. Now, most of us can meet our energy needs with that plate looking like half of it filled with colorful, bright vegetables, maybe a little bit of fruit in there, portion of that quality protein, a little bit of healthy fats, without dipping into optional additional carbohydrates like potatoes and grains and legumes. Now, if your energy needs are much higher, you may need to dip into some of those optional additional carbohydrates, but we always want to be aware that those are the ones that are going to break down into glucose more rapidly. And thus we want to be more mindful about pairing them with a healthy fat and a protein. And every one of us is a little bit different in terms of how sensitive we are to different foods, how sensitive we are to insulin. So one food may be a little bit more blood sugar friendly or safe for one person, whereas it may affect somebody else's blood sugar a little bit more readily. And that's where your own personal attunement can come into play.
Morgan, we have a question about how do we regulate low blood sugar?
Low blood sugar? This is a big question. The main thing is to try and not dip into low blood sugar in the first place. So to briefly answer this, because this would be more of the class on blood sugar. In the morning time, we generally have a good rule of thumb, a window of 90 minutes that most people can manage between when they wake up and when they break their fast. Now, in the morning, our cortisol levels are naturally highest as well, around 8:30 in the morning. So we also want to keep that in mind because cortisol is getting us up and ready for the day so we can breathe and talk and do things. So we have an opportunity in that morning to stabilize our blood sugar through food. We always want to utilize food in the way we just talked about so that we have less opportunity to have to utilize insulin and cortisol to regulate our blood sugar. So not missing the window in the morning is number one. Everyone's window is a little bit different. Some people can do a longer intermittent fast without falling into low blood sugar. Some people can have coffee and be fine. Others are going to need to have a meal with some protein and healthy fat and complex carbohydrates a little bit sooner than somebody else. So for that safe side, you want to make sure that in the morning you get 20 to 30% of your calories in that break fast within that 90-minute window. And this is going to allow that blood sugar to slowly rise and prevent you going right into low blood sugar right off of the bat. If you go right into low blood sugar right off the bat because you've missed your window, your body is going to use cortisol from your adrenal glands to bring that blood sugar back up into a healthy, normal range. And this is a little bit of a false sense of security because it can make us feel good. We feel energized. Well, I feel fine. I've got energy. Unfortunately, it's cortisol doing the job of the food, and it will lead to the inevitable crash because both hormones are so good at their job, they tend to overshoot and overcompensate. That's one thing. The other thing is after a meal, you want to pay attention to, was that meal blood sugar friendly for you? i.e., do I have sustained energy 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours afterwards? Or am I feeling tired, cranky? Is there some brain fog? And that's going to clue you in to one thing. Do I need to modify what I ate? And do I need to eat something sooner than later so that I don't run the risk of crashing into low blood sugar? I hope that answers your question.
No, that was good. Thanks.
You're welcome, guys.
Yep.
Okay, so then AGEs and the skin. So what do these AGEs actually do in the skin? We'll take a closer look at them on the dermis here. AGEs, they attach to collagen and elastin, which we talked about those two last time. They attach to these two in the dermis and they become kind of tangled and stiff. They're thought to primarily affect the proteins in the body that have slow regeneration. And the life of collagen fibers in the human is estimated to be around 10 years. So slow regeneration. And this gives them a lot of time to accumulate AGEs. The first evidence of AGEs on human skin is usually around like 20 years of age and will increase to about 30 to 50% of the collagen until about 30 to 50% of the collagen fibers have AGEs attached to them. And this can happen around age 80 or so. Now, AGEs cause collagen fibers, as I said, to become kind of tangled and stiff. both of which will alter the strength and the structure of the dermis. And we're going to take a look at what that looks like by looking at the alternative. So alternatively, when skin cells in the epidermis are on a healthy dermis, they form a nice, consistent barrier, which we can see on the left side there. At least it's my left. This is important for a lot of different reasons, right? So think again, the fatty acids. Think about those fatty acids that are going to provide strength and integrity to the cell walls and the cell structure. Even some carotenoids like lutein. Lutein runs the entire vertical of the cell membrane, giving it like a lolly column pillar of strength. So as we lay down new cells on smooth skin on a healthy dermis, those cells can lay down naturally and result in a smoother complexion. However, when they're placed upon the damaged dermis, the barrier is not as smooth and consistent, and this can lead to rougher wrinkles and the appearance of aging in the skin. The skin itself can become thinner. As I mentioned, we don't have we may not have the fatty acids to support the structure as well. So if we have thinner skin, we might be more prone to infections. Furthermore, skin damaged by AGEs is thought to have decreased elasticity, which can also lead to increased cuts and scratches. And then we get into that whole inflammation cycle again too. And lastly, this tangled network, it doesn't allow the body's natural, normal repair processes to take place efficiently. So we see decreased repair and replacement to damaged collagen that's accumulated damage for over 10 years. Oy.
Morgan, I
And-
think you froze just there for a moment. Dr. B, did she freeze for everybody else?
No,
Oh, okay.
we're
Sorry
okay.
about
Okay.
Moving along.
All right. And lastly, guys, and maybe the worst of all, it's been shown that AGEs can increase the amount of, you guessed it, free radicals created from UV radiation, further potentiating the problem. And add to it inflammation at the site of the free radical damage. This means if we're eating an unbalanced diet, for example, that results in those blood sugar spikes, we could be at even greater risk for skin damage from sun exposure because more free radicals are produced when AGEs are present. So it really behooves us to balance our blood sugar as best as we possibly can. So when I learned about this pathway and how these two feed off each other to accelerate skin aging, my immediate thoughts were, well, how can I combat AGEs? And so we have made it just about to the end here. So bear with me, guys. One of the very first things that can be done to prevent the formation of AGEs from damaging collagen is to, you guessed it, stabilize blood sugar levels by removing refined carbohydrates from the diet and learning what foods are blood sugar safe for you personally. And also because AGEs do create free radicals, the antioxidants that we talked about for skin health can help protect us from AGEs. And really great research shows us that the polyphenols in green tea can block AGE formation altogether. And they also support healthy blood sugar levels, ooh, big win, and act as free radical scavengers. So green tea really is a winner for skin health. There's some other nutrients that can block and repair the damage from AGEs as well. They're a hot topic in the pharmaceutical industry right now because they're scrambling to create drugs that will remove AGEs from proteins. But there's some naturally occurring nutrients that we can promote to inhibit and repair AGE-associated damage. These include some of our big hitters like vitamin C and vitamin E. Again, let's not forget, these guys accumulate preferentially in the skin. and some minerals like zinc and manganese. Then we have certain plants like ginger and cinnamon, cloves, marjoram, rosemary, and tarragon. Another reason to love herbs, which I believe are a really underutilized area of plants because they're just full of nutrients besides the ones we're talking about right here. And don't worry, guys, there is hope. Alpha lipoic acid, which we talked about last time, and green tea have both been shown to be effective at repairing AGE-associated damage. So we've made it to the end of part 2. One of my favorite topics, skin health. But what are our take-home messages today? UV radiation, it's one of the major causes of skin damage and skin aging. And referring back to part 1, UVA protection has recently gained more appreciation and is now thought to be just as important as UVB protection or more. And complementing external sunscreens with internal antioxidants is the optimal way to promote skin health. And our internal sunscreens include the antioxidants or free radical scavengers that we discussed, as well as immune system supporting fatty acids that can help promote a balanced inflammatory response. And there's always lots of resources, guys. I would name 2 books off the top of my head that have been really useful to myself in the past that you guys can check out. The first one is Dr. Pericome's 7 Secrets to Beauty, Health, and Longevity. That's by Nicholas Perricone, and we can certainly get those in the chat for you too. There's another one, The Inflammation Syndrome. Great book by Jack Challam. And he spells his last name Challem. Many of our articles here at Natural Grocers that we refer to as customer literature files are referenced and written by Jack Challam.
Yeah.
And I would say The World's Healthiest Foods is another winner by George. Oh, I'm going to do a number on his last name, though. Matlajan. Let me see. Matteljan. And there's so many more out there besides that. And I always like to remind folks, too, that whether you're coming, to Natural Grocers or you're looking for resources on your own, here at Natural Grocers, we have the customer literature files that I mentioned a moment ago. The 3 additional handouts you guys are receiving today are our customer literature files on carotenoids. It's a great one because it actually goes through a list of different foods and their different levels of things like lutein. And then the ultimate guide to healthy skin, which is going to tie together a lot of the things we talked about, ranging from green tea, different foods rich in carotenoids, healthy fats, modulating inflammation, as well as some of those topical antioxidants that we talked about last time. And then last but not least, so that you can go ahead and put it into practice, we have 6 smoothies for healthy skin as well. So you guys can have some fun incorporating some of the different nutrients that we talked about into a delicious and nutritious smoothie. So that's the end of part 2 of one of the most, interesting topics, in my opinion, that incorporates a lot of different systems of health. Now, if anybody has any questions and comments, concerns, please go ahead and unmute yourself and let's hear your lovely voice. Thank you all for listening.
Beautiful. Could you unshare the screen so we could see our
Absolutely.
That was lovely. Yeah, there you go. Hi, everyone. Some old and new friends here. I just wondered if you want to comment on sunscreen.
Ooh, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
I was actually listening to, I got pulled away this morning, unfortunately, but I was listening to the Anne Marie Berlin's training this morning. And right when she started to talk about zinc oxide, I had to step away and I was really bummed because I missed what she said about it. But yeah, let's talk about sunscreens for a few minutes. Zinc oxide and titanium dioxide are definitely two that you'll see, two commonplace ones that you'll see in sunscreens that are effective at blocking UVB rays, remember, and have some effectiveness at UVA, but the effectiveness at UVA is still a little bit less understood. Some of the broader spectrum sunscreens, for UVA protection, it's not determined as far as the length of time necessarily that they'll protect, but rather they'll just say broad spectrum. And then we want to keep in mind some of those rules of thumb, like reapplying after 90 minutes, or if we're swimming or sweating. Last time we actually did go into an example, which was always makes me laugh. We went through a little example of what a day at the beach would look like if we properly use sunscreen the way that most World Health Organization experts suggest we use it. And with the small little bottles, 4 to 6 ounces as it is, I think we talked about a family of 4 going through like 2 6-ounce bottles of sunscreen for a day at the beach. Which really goes to show us how important it is to complement those external sunscreen sources with those internal methods as well. Let me think about sunscreen safety. So what would I want to say about that? Things like chemical-based sunscreens, like the oxybenzone, octinosate, I'm going to butcher that one, homosalate, they're absorbed into the skin and act as endocrine disruptors. I'm not sure if you've ever heard that term before, essentially acting as xenoestrogens, meaning they take up home in our body's estrogen receptor sites, blocking our own good estrogen from getting into those receptor sites. And there can be a whole host of deleterious consequences that come with endocrine disruptors. So some of these chemical-based sunscreens it would be wise to try and avoid them as best as possible. The oxybenzone has been shown to have estrogenic and anti-androgenic effects in mammals, and has been associated with things like increased occurrence of endometriosis in women. Of course, they're not friendly for the reefs either. So I can't vouch for places outside of natural grocers. And to be honest, I haven't done much shopping of sunscreens anywhere else. But again, referring back to the list of over 200 ingredients that natural grocers doesn't allow through the door, you won't find any of those chemical-based sunscreens here for all of those important reasons.
Would you be having a link for us to read ingredients on what those blockers are to our endocrine system?
What I can do, if you guys would like, is I can email Megan the list of things we do not carry. It's an 11-page document of over 200 things, and it does include all of the body care stuff more comprehensively than, just listing out the few in sunscreens. So I'd be happy to share that with you guys if you'd like.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Morgan. And if you could also send the book suggestions, I'll share that with the group as well.
Yeah.
Yes,
But
certainly
Thank
will.
friends, you can go to Natural Grocers on their website and look at educational resources. They post and share this publicly.
Yes.
So there was a question from Andrea. Do you know anything about when the Incline Village store in, whether it's Nevada or California, is going to be ready for the Natural Grocers? I think is building a store there.
Oh, I do not know. What city is this one in?
In Incline Village, it's near Lake Tahoe.
Incline Village.
Yeah.
Lake Tahoe.
Yeah.
I can see if I can find out, and I'll add that to my follow-up email to Megan.
Thank you.
Yeah, every once in a while when we have our own little updates that we have to read through, it'll list, what positions are open and such. So that gives you an indication. So I'll see if I can find out.
So I have a fun one to share.
Oh.
I do healing retreats, fasting retreats, and all that, and we always do facials. And it's fun to do your own facial. And oftentimes, because we're juicing, we make vegetable juice. So we have pulp from carrots and celery and cucumbers and parsley and seaweed and things like that. And seaweed's another food that's amazing for inside, outside, all around.
Yes.
So with that kind of pulp, we'll put it on the face and let it, kind of sink in, because you can feed your skin. I mean, the whole point of plants is it feeds our skin and it nourishes and moisturizes it as well. And
absolutely.
Then if you want, you can add nutritional yeast, you can add flax seeds, you can add all kinds of things to literally a homemade, slap on your skin, or if you have a hot spot, of course, aloe vera is good for hot spots and burn spots and things like that. But I just think the beautiful takeaway here is that, our skin is our largest organ.
Yes.
And it's an organ of elimination.
Yes.
Organ of all kinds of things, taking things in and receiving, letting things go.
Right.
So,
that's cell membrane
we can
structure.
care for our skin by brushing our skin and, sweating and all those, many things, but also that the quality of plant food in our diet and animal food. See, this is the thing. Plant food people are all like, yeah, plants are where it's at, and plants are super necessary, but there's good nutrients and good fats and good even compounds like lipoic acid, that some of which are actually quite nice in plants or in purple potatoes. So if you saw that term, everything in a supplement came from a living thing at one point.
Yeah.
So the benefit of real nutrition is that all these great supplements that can be so expensive have their origin in nature.
Right. They are nutrients. They are
pharmaceuticals
nutrients.
and nutraceuticals are extracting, and they concentrate, and there's some value in that. But studying what you mentioned, the world's healthiest foods, is its phenomenal resource online. So whether it's WHF.com or World's Healthiest Food, it's just a free kind of library of all kinds of non-commercial information. And again, I think that's pretty important, because in our field, most things are commercial.
Definitely. And I love your point on the animal products, getting back to those omega-3s and omega-6s. Likewise, we're talking about, grass-fed beef and lamb earlier. Their omega-3 fatty profile is going to be much, much better, much healthier for us than the animal that's eating grains and corn that is not able to produce the omega-3s the way they should. So they're going to have more omega-6s than omega-3s. Not to mention zinc, L-carnitine, conjugated linoleic acid, whole bunch of things that we miss out on.
But what's nice is the summertime in most places is when there's the abundance of colorful foods.
Yes.
It's the time where there's just so much out there, and the herbs are such an important resource.
Oh, yes.
As tea or culinary spices or even medicinals. So it all become more, use these plants as our allies, and even put them on our face, like a rosemary bush. There's so much rosemary on a rosemary bush, and most people just look at it. And it's inexpensive, it's accessible. You can put it in your bathtub and take a bath with rosemary.
Yeah. Strawberries, little strawberry on the face.
So I'm saying
vitamin C.
Just know that we're bathing ourselves all the time. And creating hydration and moisturizing and, a little protection. We don't want aggressive rays from our computer or aggressive rays from the sun, just blasting us. But, a smart person goes, gee, I'm getting blasted. I think I better cover up or go in the shade.
We are just about at time. It's 1:00. So I just wanted to acknowledge, and if there's one or two more questions, Morgan, that you could quickly answer. I think there's one or two that we didn't get to.
Great.
Did you say
Hi.
zinc oxide and titanium oxide are okay, but you question its effectiveness? Did you?
Oh, yeah. Zinc oxide, I think, is quite effective and very, tends to be safe. The nano zinc, I'm not completely sure how I feel about the nano zinc. I've heard some different things about, because it's so tiny, it can accumulate then, which we may not want. So there's some questions of toxicity related to that. But good old zinc oxide is certainly a good friend when it comes to skin protection and sunscreens. As far as I know, I've not heard of anything particularly negative about titanium dioxide either. And I know that you'll often see those two together in a non-chemical based sunscreen.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I am going to invite all the participants. I just put it in the chat to complete a brief survey for us. Thank you so much for attending, Morgan. That was amazing. Thank you so much for your time.
I had a blast.
Awesome. We offer these lunch and learns every few weeks. We try to do once or twice a month. So I invite you to join our next one. And I provided the link in the chat to check out our up and coming lunch and learns. And if you haven't joined our Bauman Wellness community, please do check us out. We're online. It's a wonderful community. We're really, really happy to have you here. Dr. B, did you want to say anything else? And again, thank you so much, Morgan.
It's lovely to meet Morgan. She and I have texted
Yeah.
and
And you.
emailed and talked. So to be together is quite nice. And also to, remember things that even I have forgotten.
I know they're good little reminders, and I
It's okay.
encourage everyone to check out that carotenoid file. I'll leave you with one last thing. 1 cup of cooked organic kale contains approximately 20 milligrams of lutein, which offers immense stability to our cell structures. And I thought of this because you mentioned hydration really aids in supporting the hydration of the skin.
So we have a lovely presenter next week who's coming from Colorado, Mary Colette Rogers, on really how to be smart in creating healthy meals. So it'll be a very hands-on, practical presentation on food and food prep. So I hope to see you all back next week.